You wake up in the morning and the thought is there before you even open your eyes. The thought that says you want to disappear, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that would worry the people who care about you, but in a quiet, complete way. You want to stop participating. You want to close the door on this world and never have to perform normalcy again. You want to stop pretending that any of it matters, that any of the conversations mean something, that any of the daily rituals of human life touch anything real. And the strangest part, the part that makes this so confusing, is that this desire to vanish came after you became more aware, not less. It arrived precisely when you started to wake up, when you began to see through the mechanisms that keep most people engaged and distracted. The more conscious you became, the more you wanted to disappear. You have tried to explain this to people, but the words come out wrong. They think you are depressed, they think you need medication or therapy or a vacation. They do not understand that you are not sick. You are awake. And being awake in a sleeping world feels like a form of torture that no one warned you about. You have tried to go back, to unsee what you have seen, to return to the comfortable unconsciousness that once made ordinary life bearable. But consciousness does not work in reverse. Once you see, you cannot unsee. And so you are left with this overwhelming urge to remove yourself entirely, to find some remote place where you will never have to participate in the collective delusion again. But here is what I want you to understand. This urge to disappear, this desire to withdraw from the world, it is not the end point of consciousness. It is not the natural conclusion of waking up. It is something else entirely. And if you can stay with me for the next few minutes, I want to show you what is actually happening when conscious people feel the need to vanish, and why this impulse, as understandable as it is, might be the very last trap that unconsciousness sets for you. The phenomenon you are experiencing has a structure. It follows a pattern that has repeated itself throughout human history whenever someone wakes up to the constructed nature of reality. You start to notice that most of what people call life is actually a series of agreements to ignore certain truths. You see that conversations rarely touch anything real. You observe that people are running on scripts they did not write, pursuing goals they did not choose, believing stories they never questioned. And once you see this, once the veil lifts, you cannot participate in the same way anymore. Every interaction becomes exhausting because you are aware of the performance required. Every social gathering feels like theater, where everyone has memorized their lines except you. You start to experience what I call the consciousness fatigue, the bone-deep tiredness that comes from seeing through everything while still being required to engage with it all. And so the desire to disappear makes perfect sense. It feels like wisdom. It feels like the appropriate response to a world that has revealed itself as fundamentally unreal. Why should you participate in something you can see right through? Why should you engage with people who are still asleep? Why should you contribute to systems and structures that exist only because no one questions them? The urge to withdraw, to find a cabin in the woods or a monastery in the mountains, to remove yourself from the entire charade, this feels like the only honest response to what you now understand. But let me ask you something. What if this urge to disappear is not consciousness speaking? What if it is something else, something far more subtle and far more unconscious than you realize? Because here is what happens. When you first wake up, when you first start to see through the illusions that structure ordinary life, there is a part of you that panics. Not the conscious part. The conscious part feels liberated, feels like it has finally found the truth. But there is another part, a deeper part, that recognizes that consciousness comes with a cost. It comes with responsibility. It comes with the burden of having to live in the world with open eyes, of having to act and speak and relate while seeing clearly. And this part, this unconscious part that has always protected you, that has always found ways to keep you safe, it offers you a solution. It says, if consciousness is too painful, if seeing is too exhausting, then disappear. Remove yourself. Go somewhere where you never have to engage with the sleeping world again. Do you see what is happening? The urge to disappear is not the natural consequence of consciousness. It is a defense mechanism against consciousness. It is the ego's final strategy, its last attempt to avoid the real challenge that awareness presents. Because true consciousness, genuine awakening, it does not lead to withdrawal from the world. It leads to a different quality of presence in it. And this is where most people get confused. where the spiritual path reveals itself to be far more demanding than anyone wants to admit. When Hannah Arendt wrote about the vita contemplativa, the life of contemplation, she understood something crucial. She understood that withdrawal from the world, retreat into pure thought or pure awareness, it can be a form of escape just as much as unconsciousness is. She saw that the truly conscious life, the examined life, it does not end in isolation. It ends in what she called the vita activa, the active life, the life of engagement with the world and with others. But this engagement is transformed. It is no longer unconscious participation. It is conscious action in full awareness of the absurdity, the pain, the constructed nature of it all. And this is what consciousness actually demands. Not disappearance, not withdrawal, but presence. Full, complete, awake presence in a world that is still mostly asleep. This is the reframe I want to offer you. The desire to disappear, to remove yourself from society, to find some pristine isolation where you never have to engage with unconsciousness again. This is not spiritual maturity. It is spiritual adolescence. It is the phase where awareness has arrived, but courage has not yet caught up. Because it takes no courage to disappear. It takes no strength to withdraw. What takes courage, what demands real strength, is to stay. To remain present in the world with your eyes open. To engage with people knowing they are asleep, knowing the conversations will be shallow, knowing the systems are absurd, and still choosing to participate with full awareness. If this perspective is opening something up for you, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would love to have you along for the journey. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that staying engaged, remaining present in a world that seems fundamentally unreal, this sounds like a form of self-betrayal. It sounds like I'm asking you to go back to sleep, to participate in the illusion, even though you know it is an illusion. But this is not what I am saying at all. I am saying something far more subtle and far more challenging. I am saying that true consciousness does not remove you from the world. It changes the quality of your presence in it. And this is where most spiritual teaching gets it dangerously wrong. It tells you that awakening means detachment. It tells you that consciousness leads to transcendence, to rising above the concerns of ordinary life. And this sounds appealing, especially when ordinary life has revealed itself to be constructed, empty, meaningless. But what if detachment is not wisdom? What if it is avoidance dressed in spiritual clothing? Think about what happens when you withdraw. You remove yourself from the messy, complicated, painful reality of human existence. You create a bubble of purity, where you never have to engage with unconsciousness, never have to participate in the collective delusion, never have to feel the friction of your awareness against the sleeping world. And in this bubble, you can maintain your sense of being awake, your identity as someone who sees clearly. But what have you actually done? You have protected yourself. You have made sure that your consciousness never has to be tested, never has to be applied, never has to face the real challenge of existing in relationship with others who do not see what you see. And here is the deeper truth. Consciousness that cannot survive in the world, consciousness that requires isolation to maintain itself, this is not real consciousness. It is a state of mind. It is an intellectual understanding. It is an experience of seeing through, but it has not yet become integrated into how you actually live. Because real consciousness, the kind that Hannah Arendt pointed toward when she wrote about the examined life, it is not fragile. It does not need protection from the world. It exists in the world, acts in the world, engages with the world, and it remains clear throughout. Let me give you an example that might illuminate this. Imagine a person who learns to meditate. They go on retreat after retreat. They spend months, maybe years, sitting in silence, cultivating deep states of awareness and peace. And in those protected environments, they experience profound clarity. They see the nature of mind. They understand emptiness, impermanence, the constructed self. They are, by all measures, awake. But then they return to ordinary life. They go back to their job, their relationships, their responsibilities. And within days, sometimes hours, that clarity is gone. The peace evaporates. The awareness becomes just a memory, and they think to themselves the world is too much. Ordinary life is too chaotic, too demanding. I need to go back to the retreat, back to the monastery, back to the place where I can maintain my consciousness. But what is actually happening? Is the world destroying their awareness, or is their awareness revealing itself to be conditional, dependent on specific circumstances? Because here is what real consciousness looks like. It does not require ideal conditions. It does not need silence and isolation to exist. It is present in the noise, in the chaos, in the middle of the most ordinary, mundane, frustrating experiences of being human. It sees clearly in traffic, in arguments, in disappointment, in boredom. It does not need to be protected because it is not a state that can be disturbed. It is a way of seeing that persists regardless of circumstances. And this is why the urge to disappear, as compelling as it feels, is actually a sign that your consciousness is not yet mature. It is still fragile. It still needs certain conditions to survive. It cannot yet stand on its own in the middle of the mess and complexity of human life. And so instead of strengthening it, instead of letting it be tested and refined by engagement with the world, you want to remove it from the world entirely. You want to preserve it in isolation like a delicate plant that cannot survive outside a greenhouse. I know many of you watching this have never told anyone what you are really experiencing. You have been carrying this alone, maybe for years, thinking something is fundamentally wrong with you. But here is what I want you to understand. The moment you name this, the moment you acknowledge it out loud, even just in a comment, something shifts. You stop being alone with it. So let me ask you directly, how long have you been feeling this urge to disappear? When did you first notice that consciousness made you want to withdraw from the world? I want you to share in the comments, not because I need engagement, but because someone else watching this needs to see your words. They need to know they are not the only one. And if you cannot find the words right now, if it feels too heavy to articulate, just type this. I have felt this too. That is it. Just those 4 words, because when you do, you create permission for dozens of others to say it too. Your honesty, your willingness to be seen in your struggle, it helps break the silence that keeps all of us isolated. So comment below. Tell me where you are in this. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in what you are feeling. Now let us go deeper into why consciousness creates this desire to vanish, because understanding the mechanism is crucial to transcending it. When you wake up, when you start to see clearly, you become aware of something that Hannah Arendt called the space of appearance. This is the realm where human beings exist together, where we are visible to each other, where we act and speak and reveal ourselves. And in ordinary consciousness, in the sleep state, people participate in this space without questioning it. They show up, they play their roles, they engage in the collective performance without seeing it as performance. But when you wake up, when consciousness arrives, suddenly you see the space of appearance for what it is. You see that it is constructed, maintained by collective agreement, held together by shared fictions and unexamined assumptions, and this seeing creates a crisis. Because now you know that every time you enter this space, every time you engage with others, you are participating in something that you can see right through, and this feels like betrayal. It feels like you are lying simply by showing up. You are pretending to care about things that you know do not matter. You are engaging in conversations that you know do not touch anything real. You are playing a role in a drama that you know is absurd. And so the solution seems obvious. Remove yourself from the space of appearance entirely. Disappear. Become invisible. Stop participating in the collective performance. But here is what Arendt understood, and what most spiritual teaching misses. The space of appearance, this realm of human plurality and interaction, it is not optional. You cannot opt out of it simply by physically removing yourself, because even in isolation, even in withdrawal, you still exist in relationship to it. You are still defined by your absence from it, and more importantly, you are still a human being, and human beings require the space of appearance to become fully real. Not because the space is inherently meaningful, not because the collective performance has ultimate truth, but because consciousness itself, human consciousness, it arises in relationship. It emerges in the encounter with others. It becomes visible, even to itself, only when it acts and speaks in the world. This is the paradox that conscious people run from. They think that because they can see through the space of appearance, they should remove themselves from it. But what they do not realize is that consciousness without the space of appearance becomes abstract, disembodied, ungrounded. It becomes a state of mind rather than a lived reality. Because consciousness is not a destination. It is not a place you arrive at and then maintain in isolation. It is an activity. It is a way of being in the world, of engaging with others, of acting with full awareness that nothing is ultimately real while still treating everything as if it matters. And this is what I mean when I say that the urge to disappear is spiritual adolescence. It is the stage where you have woken up enough to see through illusions, but not enough to understand that seeing through illusions is not the end. It is the beginning. Because once you see clearly, once you understand the constructed nature of everything, you face a choice. You can withdraw, protecting your consciousness from the contamination of the world. Or you can engage, bringing your consciousness into the world, letting it be tested and refined by the very things that threaten to destroy it. Most people choose withdrawal because engagement seems impossible. How can you participate in something you know is absurd? How can you care about things that you know are ultimately empty? How can you have conversations that you know are just words bouncing between constructs called selves? And the answer is not that you pretend these things are real. The answer is that you engage with them as the human condition, as the given circumstances of existence, as the context in which consciousness must operate if it is to be anything more than an intellectual understanding. Think of it this way. A musician does not reject music because they understand that notes are just vibrations, that rhythm is just patterns in time, that melody is just the mind finding order in sound. The musician understands all of this, sees through the construction, knows that music is not ultimately real, but they play anyway. They engage with the constructed nature of music, not despite seeing through it, but because seeing through it allows them to play with freedom and creativity. They are not bound by the illusion that music has ultimate meaning, but they are also not paralyzed by the knowledge that it is constructed. They simply play, fully aware, fully present, fully engaged with something they know is both empty and meaningful at the same time. This is what conscious engagement looks like. It is not naive participation. It is not going back to sleep. It is playing the game with full knowledge that it is a game, engaging with the absurdity without being destroyed by it, caring about things that do not ultimately matter because you are a human being and human beings care. And this is far more difficult than disappearing. This requires something that withdrawal does not require. It requires courage. The courage to stay present in a world that seems unreal. The courage to engage with people who are still asleep without feeling superior or separate. The courage to act and speak and relate even though you know it is all constructed, all temporary, all ultimately empty. The courage to be visible in the space of appearance even though you know the space is an illusion. This is what consciousness demands, not escape, not transcendence, not purity, but presence, full, awake, engaged presence in the middle of the absurdity and pain and beauty of being human. And here is where it gets even more interesting. When you stop running from the world, when you stop trying to disappear, when you commit to staying present with your eyes open, something shifts. Consciousness stops being this fragile thing you need to protect. It becomes robust, it becomes integrated. It stops being a state you enter during meditation or in moments of clarity. It becomes the ground from which you operate, the lens through which you see the quality of awareness that is present regardless of circumstances. And in this integration, in this maturity, you discover that conscious engagement is not betrayal of awareness. It is the expression of awareness. It is what consciousness looks like when it stops hiding. Because consciousness that hides, consciousness that needs isolation and purity to survive, this is not yet real consciousness. It is an idea about consciousness. It is an experience of seeing through, but it has not yet become integrated into how you actually live. Real consciousness does not run from the world. It does not need to. It sees the world clearly, sees through all the illusions and constructions, and then it engages anyway. Not because the world is ultimately real, not because the illusions are true, but because engagement is what consciousness does when it exists in human form. It acts, it speaks, it relates, it participates, all while seeing clearly, all while knowing that nothing is ultimately real, all while understanding that meaning is constructed, and somehow, impossibly, this does not make life meaningless. It makes it free. This is the maturity that the urge to disappear prevents you from reaching. As long as you are running, as long as you are trying to escape the contamination of the sleeping world, you never have to face the real challenge of consciousness. You never have to discover whether your awareness can survive in the marketplace, in the argument, in the mundane frustration of being human. You get to keep your consciousness pristine and untested, but you also keep it weak. You keep it dependent on conditions. You keep it fragile. And so I want to offer you a different possibility. What if you stopped trying to disappear? What if you brought your consciousness into full engagement with the world, not despite seeing through it, but because you see through it? What if the point is not to transcend the human condition, but to inhabit it fully with clear eyes? What if consciousness is not meant to remove you from life, but to allow you to live more completely, more honestly, more freely than those who are still asleep? If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been feeling, something you have not quite been able to name, then I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us exploring these questions, sitting with these uncomfortable truths, learning to see in new ways. I create these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who are not satisfied with surface answers, who want to understand rather than just feel better temporarily. If that is you, consider subscribing. Not because you need another channel to follow, but because this journey of understanding yourself, of waking up to what is real, it helps to have companions along the way. People who will not offer you easy fixes, but will sit with you in the questions. I will be here every week with another exploration, another perspective, another thread to pull on, and I would be honored to have you here as part of this community of seekers and thinkers. So if this feels right, hit that subscribe button. And if you found value in this particular exploration, let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. Your reflections often illuminate things I had not considered. Now, let me address what I know some of you are thinking. You are thinking that what I am proposing sounds exhausting. You are thinking that engaging with unconscious people, participating in meaningless rituals, showing up in a world that you can see right through, this would drain whatever life force you have left. And I understand this concern. Because yes, unconscious engagement is exhausting. Playing roles you do not believe in is draining. Pretending to care about things that do not matter depletes you. But this is not what I am proposing. I am not asking you to go back to unconscious participation. I am pointing towards something entirely different. Conscious engagement. Conscious engagement means you show up in the world without illusions. You see the absurdity clearly. You understand that most conversations are just patterns repeating, that most concerns are constructed, that most of what people call important is actually just distraction from deeper questions. You see all of this, and then you engage anyway. But your engagement is different. It is lighter. It is free from the need for things to be meaningful or real. You participate in conversations knowing they are constructed, and somehow this knowing allows you to be more present, not less. You fulfill your responsibilities understanding they are arbitrary, and this understanding makes you more capable, not more detached. You relate to people seeing their unconsciousness, and this seeing fills you with compassion rather than judgment. Because here is what happens when you try to disappear, when you withdraw into isolation or purity or the role of the awakened outsider. You create separation. You position yourself as different from, better than, separate from the sleeping world. And this separation, it feels like consciousness, it feels like clarity, but it is actually another form of unconsciousness. It is the ego reconstituting itself around the identity of being awake. And the ego, this construct that creates the sense of separate self, it is very clever. When it cannot maintain itself through ordinary unconsciousness anymore, when you have seen through too much for that to work, it will rebuild itself around spiritual identity, around being the one who sees, around being too conscious for the world, around needing to disappear because you are too awake to participate. Do you see the trap? The urge to disappear is not consciousness protecting itself from the world. It is the ego protecting itself from the implications of consciousness. Because real consciousness destroys the ego, not in a dramatic spiritual death, in a slow, continuous dissolving that happens through engagement with others, through the constant revelation that there is no separate self who is awake looking at others who are asleep. There is just awareness appearing in different forms, at different levels of clarity, in different states of recognition. And when you withdraw, when you disappear, you prevent this dissolution. You keep the ego intact by giving it a spiritual identity to cling to. This is why engagement is essential, not because the world needs you, not because you have some duty to help the sleeping masses wake up, but because consciousness itself requires engagement to mature, to integrate, to move beyond being just an experience or understanding into being the ground of your existence. And this maturity, this integration, it happens through the friction of relating to others, through the challenge of acting in the world, through the constant confrontation with the fact that your consciousness does not make you special or separate or different. It just makes you see clearly. And when you see clearly, really clearly, you understand something that changes everything. You understand that there is no you who is conscious looking at a world that is unconscious. There is just consciousness itself, appearing as you, appearing as others, appearing as the world, at different levels of recognition of itself. And from this understanding, the desire to disappear dissolves. Because who would disappear? Where would they go? The separate self that wants to escape is revealed as just another thought, just another construction, just another pattern of unconsciousness masquerading as awakening. So the question is not whether you should disappear or engage. The question is whether you are willing to let consciousness mature beyond the point where it needs protection, beyond the point where it requires special conditions, beyond the point where it creates separation. Are you willing to stay in the world with your eyes open? Are you willing to let your awareness be tested and refined by the very things you want to escape from? Are you willing to discover that consciousness does not remove you from life, but allows you to finally, fully, completely inhabit it? This is the invitation, not to transcend the human condition, not to rise above the mess and absurdity of existence, but to be fully human with full consciousness, to act without illusion, to care without attachment, to engage without losing yourself, to be present without needing anything to be different. This is what consciousness actually demands when it stops running from itself. And yes, it is difficult. It is far more difficult than disappearing. It requires something that retreat does not require. It requires you to stand in the space of appearance, visible and vulnerable, knowing that you will be misunderstood, that your awareness will not be recognized, that most people will never see what you see. It requires you to participate in the collective performance, knowing it is performance. It requires you to care about things that ultimately do not matter because you are human and humans care. It requires you to act knowing that action is absurd and necessary at the same time. But this difficulty, this challenge, it is not suffering. It is what consciousness looks like when it is no longer protecting itself. It is what awareness feels like when it stops trying to escape from the very life it inhabits. And in this engagement, in this full participation with clear eyes, you discover something that retreat never reveals. You discover that consciousness does not need to be preserved or protected. It is indestructible. It is present whether you engage or withdraw. The only question is whether it will remain fragile and isolated or become robust and integrated. Whether it will stay in the greenhouse or learn to survive in the wild. Whether it will remain an idea about awakening or become the living reality of being awake in the middle of ordinary life. So to return to where we began, to that moment when you wake up with the overwhelming urge to disappear, to remove yourself from a world that suddenly seems unbearable in its unconsciousness. What I'm saying is this: that urge is real, that exhaustion is valid, that desire to escape makes complete sense, but it is not the end point of consciousness. It is a transition point. It is the moment when awareness has arrived, but courage has not yet caught up. And if you can stay through this moment, if you can resist the pull toward isolation and purity, if you can bring your consciousness into full engagement with the messy, absurd, painful, beautiful reality of being human, then something remarkable happens. The consciousness that wanted to disappear becomes the consciousness that can stay. The awareness that needed protection becomes the awareness that needs nothing. The seeing that created separation becomes the seeing that reveals there was never anyone separate to begin with, and you find yourself not transcending the world, but fully present in it for the first time. Not as someone who has escaped the human condition, but as someone who has finally stopped running from it. And in this stopping, in this willingness to stay, the consciousness you have been trying so hard to preserve reveals itself as something you never needed to protect at all. It was always here, always present, always indestructible, waiting only for you to stop hiding it in isolation and bring it into the light of ordinary, imperfect, gloriously absurd human life.